I really like FP, but I can't say it's a masterpiece because that's just not true. It and Katie's other work was initially able to create intrigue, but to this day, most of what we know about the characters is either vague or incredibly basic, though in a way that was probably in its best interest. I'm being serious when I say this. FP actually makes great use of its format. I guarantee the Basics in Behavior song by itself can only relate so much to each individual character, and even if the song was a perfect fit for all of its content, there wouldn't be enough time to explore everything in a way that's both engaging and fulfilling. So under that context, it was definitely the right move for it to be treated more as a proof of concept. Mentioned that in a video called FP is Genius, but you won't, cause you're an idiot! I know some kind of full series would have definitely been able to explore its ideas further without the same level of compromise, but that most likely won't get the chance to see the light of day anymore. Unless we just do it ourselves. Because none of this has stopped the community from trying to create their own theoretical FP stories, one of which being Claire's Precious Little Life, an extended remake of the original. Usually FP fans talk about this like it's super insulting to the original, but I just felt like it was kind of aimless and unambitious. I don't believe the creator didn't care at all about making it good. There are some neat bits in here, and he's clearly an FP fan himself, but I don't think he knew what he was doing. And honestly, I'm not exactly sure how to do this either, so let's just start talking about the characters and see where it goes from there. Claire, just like everyone else, is not the most investing. I guess the most of an arc she has is in relation to her concerns and suspicions surrounding the school. However, nothing seems to challenge her preconceptions. At first, Miss Circle tries to act normal, but we aren't given a reaction from Claire suggesting that she might be having doubts about her fears. And when Miss Circle scolds Abby for talking in class, that doesn't have Claire's reaction either, which could have led to her reconsidering that maybe she was right. Not that it matters though, cause her suspicions are proven right multiple times. First when she sees Alice kill someone, second when Miss Bloomy and the other teachers try to kill her, then when she sees the corpses of Abby and Lana, then after she stumbles into Alice's room on accident and says,
"You're no student, you're a monster."
Except she already knew that. It's not like she was ever delusional or anything. In fact, not only is Claire not really challenged that much herself, but she doesn't really challenge anything else. You'd think that would be guaranteed to happen as the new student, but no. She's about to question Miss Thaffel on why Miss Circle was chasing Abby, but the bell rings and everyone has to leave anyway without Miss Thaffel needing to defend herself. After which, Claire does not attempt to investigate anything herself, and the truth just comes to her anyway. The only decision she makes that causes significant disruption is at the way too early 10:40 lunch. Oliver and his gang are insulting her and her friends and making fun of Abby and Lana after they've gone missing, and then Claire beats the shit out of them, which sends them to the principal, though Oliver gets off unpunished. Then after he drops her down the pit, Miss Bloomy, I think, assumes Claire was ditching class, and when combined with Miss Grace telling her about Claire being a delinquent so far, views it as grounds for murder. Also from this action, we can gather that Claire might be short-sighted since she doesn't seem to consider if she'd get in trouble for this, and it shows the lengths she's willing to go to support and stand up for her friends. The furthest this goes in terms of character development, however, is that Claire is about to confront Oliver again, but this time Engel stops her so she doesn't get in bigger trouble, after which the only mistake she makes is stumbling into Alice's room, which wasn't even her fault. Claire also doesn't have any goals other than to do well in school and survive, which are applicable to basically all the students, and fixing that alone I think would have made her journey much more engaging, on top of making the direction she goes in much more clear, cause I had no idea what her deal was on my first viewing. She could have revealed some of her interests when initially meeting up with Engel and Bubble, but she just did so much stuff while she was gone that she just forgot, and high-key, she's not even really that nice.
So Claire, what you been doing?
Trying to listen.
Moving on, her friends are about the same. Engel is supportive and helpful and friendly, and that's his character. There's like 2 or 3 bits where he's a little naive, but after the lunch scene, that pretty much gets dropped, and only the first instance I would even consider to have substantial consequences. But I'll talk about that later. He also develops a crush on Claire, but that's about as far as that goes. He might have been trying to advance their relationship in the library scene, but I literally don't know what they're talking about other than
How perfect our precious little lives are.
Bubble is definitely a nice person, but all she gets to do is call out Claire and Engel for not comforting her at the pool when she sees Oliver eating soap. Lana is weird, Claire appreciates that about her, but that's about it. Abby is said to be a struggling student, but as far as I'm aware, he doesn't have anything to live for, just like Claire. And since Claire and her friends aren't the most engaging, I don't feel bad that Oliver is picking on them. He could have been a much better character too. He and his friends think they're better than Claire, probably because they perform much better on their schoolwork than her, making them Miss Circle's favorite students students and inflating their egos even more, though it's possible that they only get these scores and get away with being nuisances in class because Miss Circle is biased, so in that case, unless the point is that they are super shallow, I don't understand at all why they hate Claire or why Miss Circle favors them. For the sake of my sanity though, I'm just gonna accept the high grades thing. He also has a goal to reach, being so offended by Engel roasting him that he explicitly declares scheming up revenge. However, maybe it's just me, but the trouble he causes afterwards seems like it still would have occurred without being prompted to happen. This goal might have even been forgotten about by the creator really quickly, so I don't feel any genuine anger from Oliver being a petty douchebag. Not even his relationship with Alice is strong enough to make this work. Other than both of them being malicious, there's not any specific details that explain why they trust and respect each other, what they've done for each other, all that jazz. Oliver does at least have more control over the plot though. His goal might have been chopped, but he gets Claire to fight him, chops her down the library, he sets up the fake exit sign which gets Claire killed. His development is not the best though. I think he's supposed to go down a rabbit hole of becoming more and more cruel with his actions, but I've already explained that he's kind of a weak villain. He doesn't exactly enter rage bait mode when Bubbles spots him eating soap, but he does end up being a major contributor to Zip and Edward's arcs. At first they're willing to go along with Oliver's antics, also thinking they're better than Claire and her friends, but then they start thinking he's weird and eventually a psycho, and later guilty and sorrowful of Claire's death. I'd consider this one of the better parts of the story, but Zip and Edward's growth still aren't the most convincing. Not only do they never make an effort to connect with Claire, but they're not really shown or said to be all that different from Oliver until they're supposed to go against him. Zip at least is shown to have a good relationship with her brother, but nothing is done with him that demonstrates what she would respect other people for and why. He doesn't convince her to think differently either, so he might as well be completely removed. Anyway, I think the story is missing bits of Zip and Edward having disagreements with Oliver on what they do to others, along with him trying to convince them that what they're doing isn't a bad idea or a big deal in general, that build up to this big act they can't see themselves defending at all. And since it takes this long for them to show any kind of negative response to the trouble they're about to or have already caused, it's only until then that their dynamic actually starts to get a little more interesting. Edward instantly opposes the idea of using his drone to drop Claire down the library pit, and Oliver is just as quick to convince him to do it anyway. Zip, on the other hand, doesn't seem to be against this until right after it occurs. I understand regretting past actions, but this literally just happened. What were you thinking about that made you change your mind? However, when she does start having second thoughts, she's much more hesitant to oppose Oliver so bluntly. I'm presuming not to catch as much shit from him, judging by her seeming to disapprove of Oliver blackmailing Edward to get his way, and adding the fact of Oliver taking over control of the drone when Edward clearly doesn't like other people messing with his stuff. I could see some people wondering why these two even bother hanging out with him when he clearly doesn't even respect his own friends. Too bad I don't know why. Alright, I don't know how to transition to this, but last character I want to put special attention on is Alice. First of all, her introduction is literally a lecture planned by the school, and that's already not very cash money, but for some reason she just goes along with it. I don't know if those who've seen the original got this impression, but Alice seems to greatly prefer living in isolation. Even when she does occasionally leave her room, she doesn't look like she wants anyone to get in her way. The only character she ever seems to get along with is Oliver, and if you've only seen this animation, that doesn't even seem to be true. And yet here she is, completely okay with it, on top of being really prideful of her cruelty. Alice did intentionally cause harm without remorse, but I never thought she was necessarily jumping for joy at the thought of hurting others, though I guess some external artwork would go against this, so... And her portrayal doesn't make her very menacing, as if her goofy voice filter didn't already do the trick.
Something you need, my eye.
No goals, no arc, doesn't affect things much. The other characters are already not that compelling, so I'm not worried about Alice messing with them. She just sucks! She's easily the worst character here, or at least my least favorite. I wasn't sure exactly what was wrong with this for a while, but I think now I know. A bunch of characters are set up to be important, but then they're barely expanded on. The plot doesn't feel very eventful. Oh yeah, we're done talking about individual characters by the way, so overall problems, I guess. As if the story didn't already drag on with its really slow pacing and not very compelling writing in general, some scenes could have easily been cut. Like Miss Circle telling the other teachers about Claire being new and to do their jobs better, but it's a brand new school year, so there will be brand new students regardless, and the other teachers aren't important to the story, so they don't need this introduction, and Miss Circle herself could have been just as easily introduced in her class. There's another scene of Oliver acting out of music class. At first I thought he was doing that because because of Zip and Edward opposing him, but it turns out he's always causing a ruckus there, so it doesn't even have that going for it. Miss Sasha's crash out scene could have also been cut. I've already said that Chip as a whole doesn't feel important, so by extension his scenes could have also been removed. There's probably a few others I could mention, but I'm just gonna move on. In addition to Alice's introduction, there's a few other bits of not so great exposition, though to that scene's credit, she does actually get to kill someone. Meanwhile, Mr. Demi literally says he can't stand up for himself despite already demonstrating such behavior. I already mentioned the scene of Miss Circle telling the other teachers they're bad at their jobs. Even the very first scene of Claire in the car is exposition.
How's my girl? Aren't they excited for their first day at a new school?
But Dad, the paper school? I've heard horrific stories of that place.
They are at least arguing, but wouldn't they have already had this conversation at home? And finally, usually a story has some kind of focus, but here, I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from everything that goes down. It's not even really trying to be a commentary on the public education system, and I was already never exactly praising the original for that. Then again, if this tried to tell a more specific story, it would have had to compromise, since it's also unwilling to try anything all that new or deviate from the original in almost any way. Not sure what else to add back there at this point, so miscellaneous. I mean, this whole video hasn't been organized the best, and I've been working on it for like a month now, but despite being said to have yelled at students before, Miss Sasha doesn't feel like she's holding back any anger in the 2 scenes she has before crashing out at Oliver. Speaking of which, I was willing to believe Oliver's reaction at first, cause he probably just didn't expect it to happen, but the blackmail scene from earlier would imply that Oliver knew Edward would catch a bunch of shit from Miss Sasha, so why is he surprised? Is this the first time he's ever gotten in trouble or something? Or should I say the second? Because he does get in trouble with Claire after she fights him, and he starts lying about the tragedy and how he couldn't defend himself, but why didn't he? I never thought he didn't know how to fight or anything. In fact, he probably should know how to defend himself if he's willing to cause physical harm to people. Also, Miss Grace knew Oliver was bullshitting here, yet she just let him off scot-free. That should be a pretty good sign that maybe he started it, so why didn't she ask any more questions? A side character named Riley gets a minor focus, having a crush on Oliver and confronting Alice because blah 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 jealousy, blah 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 dummy replacement. So you have a character with everything going for her, and you just don't do anything else with her. In the very first scene with Claire and her dad, he mentions that he remembers experiencing and seeing messed up stuff when he went to the paper school as a kid, but he dismisses all of it and assumes they're just rumors. I'm not an expert on psychology or anything, but which one is it? Does he know what's happening or not? Either way, it would still be smarter for Claire to enroll in a school that doesn't have that kind of reputation. And honestly, I think I wouldn't have even questioned this if it weren't for this scene, but why is Claire enrolling in the paper school? I already talked about her, but it's not like she ever had irrational fears or anything, and all her dad says is,
If I can survive, so can you.
if only there was a better version of this. Oh wait, there is! It's called the pilot. That's right, we're still not done. Though I'm not fully convinced that it was supposed to be the pilot, but since it's labeled as such, that's how I'm gonna treat it. So, this pilot is okay. And funny enough, it actually shares a lot in common with the original, though probably not as consciously. It repurposes the What's the Matter Martha song about an existential crisis into Claire hating the school and her classmates telling her to smile more. It doesn't try to cover too much within its runtime or anything that may not fit the song, and unlike the full series, it doesn't feel like a waste of time. So in conclusion, Claire's little life is not that precious. Oh, and I didn't even mention why it's a trilogy. It's for no reason, so subscribe, share, hype, whatever.